So we're headed out to the Gulf of Mexico, and we're headed out to about 33 feet deep to an area that's reported to be a hard bottom habitat.
Dr. James Douglas is a marine biologist at FGCU and certified scuba diver, passionate about the delicate environment that is the Gulf of Mexico.
There's a real diversity of life in the Gulf of Mexico, particularly in the hard bottom, rocky bottom spots.
Part of his research is surveying the seabed to document how corals and other sea life respond to pollution and other changes to the environment. But a new venture planned for 40 miles west of Sarasota has him concerned.
Picture sort of a giant cloud of fish poo billowing out of this fish pen.
He's talking about a Hawaii-based aquaculture company called Offshore, which is planning a pilot program here to farm Almaco jack in a giant cage like this.
So the concern is that anytime you create one of these really big offshore fish farms, you're creating kind of a dead zone underneath it. It would be a huge disaster if these things turned out to be starting red tides, and then we'd have even more red tides than we have now.
And while 50 to 60 miles out in the Gulf of Mexico might seem far enough to dilute this kind of waste, elsewhere in the world, projects like this have had disastrous results. But in a Zoom meeting from Hawaii, Offshore CEO Neil Sims explained that's exactly why they chose the offshore location.
Part of the reason why we want to be able to do this 40 miles offshore is that that's where the water is deep enough and where we know that we will have no significant impact. And often the data from the existing offshore fish farms shows that often you'll have not even a measurable impact on the water quality.
The project is just one example of a recent boom in interest in aquaculture in the Gulf of Mexico, not just limited to fish.
The US in particular, it's an imperative that we start to do this. The US imports more seafood by dollar value than any other nation on the planet.
Andrew Richard, an aquaculture coordinator for NOAA, says they're working on an impact study for a series of aquaculture opportunity areas in the Gulf, with one just 60 miles offshore from Naples.
Creating areas or looking for areas where finfish, shellfish, and seaweed aquaculture and the aquaculture industry writ large can be successful in siting and deploying these operations is something that's really important.
And while these zones are separate from the Almaco Jack pilot project, it highlights a growing interest in private business using the Gulf as a way to farm not just fish, but oysters and seaweed, which can even be beneficial to water quality.
Aquaculture requires good water quality for it to be successful, and that's why siting farms in locations with the appropriate depth, the appropriate currents, ocean conditions are critical to supporting sustainable aquaculture development, including finfish aquaculture.
And while these zones and even the pilot fish farm project still need to be vetted, it's a concern that Douglas doesn't take lightly.
There's this big federal effort to advance fish farming, and it's a good idea in theory. Some types of fish farming can be more sustainable for the environment than capturing fish from the wild, but this particular type of fish farming I don't think is one of those.
If we're going to feed 10 billion people on this planet with the animal protein that they want to eat, then the oceans are going to have to be a critical element of that.
Reporting in Lee County, Alex Howard, NBC2.